You stand in the shadows of a temple that has been sealed for centuries. The stone beneath your feet is cold, smooth, and damp, as if it still remembers the countless bodies that once walked here barefoot. The air is thick with incense sweet at first, but quickly suffocating, clinging to your lungs until you feel lightheaded. Torches flicker along the painted walls, their flames dancing over images of gods locked in strange, intimate embraces. You see Isis nursing Osiris, Hathor dancing naked before Ra, and carvings of phalluses larger than life. These are not the Egypt you are taught in school. This is the Egypt that was hidden. A priest enters, his body shaven clean, his skin glistening with sacred oils. His eyes do not meet yours. He whispers prayers to the gods, but his hands perform movements that are both ritualistic and disturbingly sensual. You realize, with a chill running down your spine, that what you are witnessing is not merely devotion. It is a blending of sex, death, and divinity. Egypt, to the world, is pyramids rising like mountains and golden tombs buried deep in the desert. But here, within these sealed chambers, lies another truth. A truth carved into walls, whispered in hymns, and enacted in ceremonies so forbidden that most Egyptians never saw them. The priesthood guarded these rituals with blood and silence. Incest performed in honor of divine siblings. Public acts of seed spilled as offerings to gods. Women chosen as living brides for invisible deities. And orgiastic rites hidden in chambers where torches burned low and wine loosened every restraint. Tonight, you will not walk among tourists in daylight. You will descend into the shadows of the temple and witness what ordinary Egyptians never could, the most disturbing sexual practices of the Pharaonic priesthood. You step barefoot onto the cool limestone floor. The stone seems alive under your feet, polished smooth by centuries of bodies that have walked this path before you. The silence of the temple presses down like a weight, broken only by the distant sound of a reed flute echoing through the halls. At first, you think you are entering a building of worship, but as your eyes adjust to the torchlight, you begin to see something unsettling. The columns that rise around you are not just stone, they are carved thick and straight, unmistakably phallic in design. The ceiling curves above you like the inside of a womb. Every surface, every symbol, whispers the same message. You are not inside a temple. You are standing within the sexual body of a god. A priest appears, his skin glistening in the orange glow. His head is shaven, his face solemn. Without a word, he removes his linen robe until he is naked before the altar. You watch as he steps into a basin of sacred water, his body washed by attendants with oils pressed from lotus and myrrh. The scent is overwhelming sweet, intoxicating, almost narcotic. It clings to your nose, heavy and arousing. To the Egyptians, this was not mere cleansing. It was a rebirth. The naked priest was stripped of human filth and remade into a vessel of fertility. A priest must be pure, one inscription declares, for he is the blood of the god, the seed of eternity. You realize that every touch of oil, every wash of water, is more than hygiene. It is foreplay to awaken the divine body of the temple itself. Incense burns from golden censers, thick clouds rising toward the ceiling. The smoke coils and swirls, almost alive, curling around the priest's body like invisible hands. In the hymns carved on the walls, this smoke is described as the breath of arousal, a sign that the god within the temple stirs to life. You feel the heat of it in your lungs, and for a moment, it seems as if the temple itself is breathing, sighing, hungering. As you move deeper, you notice the walls are alive with carvings, lotus blossoms opening, men and women joined in erotic embrace, and endless rows of erect symbols. None of it is hidden. In this sacred place, sexuality is not shameful. It is the most direct language of the gods. New initiates are brought forward. Young men trembling, their heads freshly shaved, their bodies gleaming with oil. They are told they are no longer individuals, but organs in the divine body of the temple. One priest whispers into an initiate's ear, his voice echoing, "You are the heart. You are the breath. You are the seed." It is then you understand the horror of it. To serve here, one must surrender completely. Your body, your desires, even your very identity, must dissolve into the ritual organism of the temple. To resist is blasphemy. To obey is to become nothing more than flesh and blood, moving at the will of gods who demand not only worship, but embodiment. The torchlight flickers, casting shadows that look almost human. The temple breathes. The priests move like organs inside a living body. And you, standing among them, feel the unsettling truth. In ancient Egypt, faith was not about prayer alone. It was carnal, consuming, and deeply sexual. The temple itself was alive, and you are now inside its body. You step into the temple's inner court. The air is heavy, suffused with the smell of burning resin and crushed lotus. The walls are covered with scenes of plowing fields, rivers overflowing, and gods spilling their seed upon the earth. Every symbol here is fertility. Every carving whispers the same message. Without seed, there is no life. The priests stand in a circle, their bodies gleaming with oil, their heads bowed as they chant hymns older than the pyramids. The sound is deep, rhythmic, almost hypnotic, like the beating of a giant heart. You feel it echo in your chest as one priest steps forward, his body trembling not from fear, but from the weight of what he is about to perform. For the Egyptians, seed was not a private matter. It was divine substance, the very fluid of creation. In the myths, the god Adam stood alone in the chaos of nothingness. With his own hand, he released life into the void, and from that act, the first gods were born. To imitate Adam was not shameful. It was sacred. The priest lifts his hands to the sky, whispering words carved in ancient hymns. As Adam gave life, so I give life. As the river floods, so the earth will bear fruit. His body becomes an offering, his seed a spark of creation. You realize with a shiver that this is not metaphor, it is reenactment. Around you, farmers and villagers kneel, watching in silence. They have traveled days from the fields to witness this moment. They believe that by watching, by standing close as the priest offers his seed, their harvest will be blessed. The Nile will rise, the soil will blacken, and the grain will grow high. The ritual continues. Another priest brings forth a golden vessel, its shape unmistakably phallic. It glitters in the torchlight as it is raised high, then lowered as if planting creation into the temple floor. The air grows thick with chanting, with incense, with the pounding of drums that mimic the rhythm of a heartbeat. Historians such as Plutarch wrote of these rites, describing how Egyptians saw the flooding of the Nile as a divine ejaculation, a release that brought life to the land. As you watch, you cannot help but notice the parallels. The river's waters were the seed of the god, spilling across the black earth to make it fertile. And here, inside this chamber, the priests mirror that same cycle with their bodies. An initiate is brought forward. His face is pale, his body shaking. He is told that to serve the temple, he must become part of the act of creation. An elder leans close and whispers words meant only for him. You are Adam. Through you, life begins again. The moment is unsettling. To you, it feels intrusive, almost obscene. Yet to them, it is the holiest act imaginable. The seed is not lust, not desire. It is a gift to the gods, a ritual that ensures the sun will rise, the river will flood, and Egypt will endure another year. The chanting reaches a fever pitch. The air feels hotter, heavier, as if the temple itself is pulsing with life. Farmers outside the gates begin to cheer, lifting their hands to the heavens. They do not see every detail, but they know what has taken place inside, and for them, that knowledge is enough. You step back, your body tense, your stomach uneasy. You have just witnessed the most private of human acts transformed into a cosmic drama. In Egypt, nothing was too sacred to imitate, not even the gods spilling their seed into the void. And as the drums fade, you realize a disturbing truth. The very life of Egypt flowed from the seed of men who believed themselves vessels of the divine. The chamber is silent, except for the voice of a single priest. His tone is deep, measured, echoing through the stone walls as he recites a tale older than the pyramids. The story is not whispered in shame. It is proclaimed with reverence. It is the story of Isis and Osiris, brother and sister, husband and wife, lovers whose union shaped the destiny of Egypt. On the walls, painted in ochre and gold, you see them entwined, Isis kneeling beside the dismembered body of Osiris, giving him life again. To the Egyptians, this was not scandal. It was sacred. Their union was proof that the divine blood must never be diluted. The priest pauses, his eyes shining in the torchlight. Around you, the audience murmurs, not in horror, but in awe. Because here, within this chamber, incest is not forbidden. It is exalted. You begin to understand. To the Egyptians, gods were not bound by the laws of mortals. Purity did not mean separation. It meant uniting with your own blood, keeping the divine essence unbroken. To imitate the gods was not corruption. It was the holiest act imaginable. Pharaohs carried this belief into their own lives. The marriage bed of Egypt's rulers was not always one of choice, but of ritual. Sister and brother, father and daughter, even child and mother unions that would horrify the modern mind were seen as divine reenactments of the gods themselves. Cleopatra, centuries later, would follow this path, marrying her brother in the name of tradition, not desire. But what shocks you most is not what the pharaohs did in their palaces. It is what the priests did here, in the darkness of the temples. Behind closed doors, rituals were performed to mirror the incest of the gods. Chosen initiates were paired in unions that blurred the boundaries of family. The priests believed that by imitating Osiris and Isis, they were restoring the world to its original divine order. An inscription on a crumbling papyrus whispers, "To unite with one's sister is to return to the first creation when no other existed but brother and sister, god and goddess." The words sink into you like ice. Here, what is forbidden in every culture is transformed into holiness. The forbiddance is the path to the divine. You hear the priest continue his chant, his voice low and trembling now, almost as if he himself is caught in the ecstasy of the tale. Osiris entered Isis, his sister, and the throne of Egypt was born. The audience bows, some touching their lips in reverence. No one recoils. No one dares call it corruption. Your skin prickles with unease. You realize that to these people, incest was not taboo. It was a way to imitate the gods, to purify, to rise above human laws. And yet, you cannot shake the thought, how many children of these unions were born not of love, but of obligation? How many women were told they must submit, not to a husband, but to a brother, because the gods demanded it? The torches flicker, casting shadows of Osiris and Isis locked in their eternal embrace. You hear whispers ripple through the chamber. Some sound like prayers, others sound like sighs. And as you stand there, you understand what the ancients believed, that holiness was not always found in purity, but sometimes in what we would call corruption. To them, incest was not a sin. It was the essence of divine truth. For you, it is something else entirely, a disturbing glimpse into a world where the most forbidden of human acts was embraced as sacred ritual. The drums begin first, a slow, thunderous rhythm that rolls across the desert night, echoing against the stone temples of Abydos. You stand among the crowd, pressed shoulder to shoulder with villagers, nobles and slaves, all waiting for the procession to begin. And then you see it. Priests emerge from the shadows, carrying towering golden phalluses on their shoulders, gleaming under torchlight. They sway like sacred banners, polished until they shine brighter than the stars above. The people cheer not in mockery, not in shame, but in awe. Women reach out trembling hands, touching the gilded shafts as the priests pass, whispering prayers of fertility, health, and rebirth. To your eyes, it feels surreal, even obscene, but to them, it is the highest act of reverence. The story behind it is whispered all around you. Osiris, the god who was murdered, torn into 14 pieces by his jealous brother Seth. His wife and sister Isis gathered every fragment of his broken body, reassembling her beloved to breathe life into him once more. But one part she could never find, his phallus, swallowed by the Nile. That absence became the center of Egypt's most shocking rituals. The priests stop before the temple gates. Torches flare. The air fills with incense, thick, musky, intoxicating. You step forward, following the crowd into the darkness within. The temple walls are alive with carvings, rows upon rows of oversized phalluses, etched in stone, painted in deep red and gold. Some stand alone, towering like monuments. Others are shown erupting with rivers of life, flowing into the fields, blessing the Nile itself. A priest chants, his voice trembling. As Osiris rises, so shall Egypt rise. His seed is our harvest, his strength our eternity. At the center of the chamber stands a massive effigy of Osiris's missing organ, carved in stone, wrapped in linen, glistening with sacred oils. Women approach it with reverence, placing garlands of lotus and papyrus at its base. The high priest anoints it with perfumes, stroking it with slow, deliberate care as if coaxing life itself from stone. Around you, the crowd sways, chanting Osiris's name. Some women press their foreheads against the statue, murmuring pleas for children. Others kiss it softly, as though it were a living god. You can't look away. The scene feels like a blur between ritual and desire, between the sacred and the profane. To the Egyptians, there is no contradiction. For them, this phallus is not obscene, it is resurrection itself. The missing organ of Osiris became the ultimate symbol of renewal, of the eternal cycle of death and rebirth. Outside, the festival grows wilder. Processions of smaller phallic icons flood the streets. Drums beat faster. Torches whirl in the night. Priests lift their voices in songs of ecstasy. Touch it, one woman whispers beside you, pushing your hand forward. Her eyes are wide, filled with desperation. It blesses the womb. It blesses the future. You hesitate, your skin crawling, but the crowd surges around you, eager, frenzied. Everywhere you turn, golden and wooden phalluses are lifted high, kissed, caressed, praised. And then you realize something unsettling. This is not just about Osiris. This is about control, about binding fertility, kingship, and divine power into one ritual object. The missing phallus of Osiris had been transformed into a god of its own, worshipped, adored, feared. The drums crash one final time. The priests raise their voices in a single thunderous cry. Life from death. Seed from stone. Osiris rises. The crowd erupts in wild jubilation. You feel the ground tremble beneath their stomping feet. For them, the festival is proof that life can always be reborn, no matter how violent the loss. But to you, it feels like something else. A glimpse into a civilization where the most forbidden, the most intimate symbol of manhood was elevated to the holiest of altars. And as the torches die down and the golden phalluses disappear once more into the temple, you are left with a truth as disturbing as it is undeniable. In ancient Egypt, resurrection was not only about gods and souls, it was about flesh, desire, and the missing phallus of Osiris. The chanting begins long before you reach the temple. Low, rhythmic voices carried on the night wind, weaving through the streets of Thebes. The people gather in silence, their eyes fixed on the sacred gates of Karnak. Tonight, they believe, a god himself will descend. and at the center of it, all one girl. You see her, cloaked in white linen, her head veiled, her feet bare against the cold stone. She is young, barely past childhood. The priests call her Hemet Neter, the wife of the god. Tonight, her body is no longer her own. It belongs to Amun, the hidden one, the supreme god of Egypt. The crowd falls to its knees as she passes. Hands reach out, but none dare touch her. She is untouchable now, sanctified, feared. Mothers whisper to their children, "Look, the goddess walks among us." Inside the temple, torches sputter, shadows stretch. Incense thickens the air, sweet, heavy, suffocating. You follow, heart pounding, into the chamber forbidden to most mortals. There, at the center, rests a ceremonial bed, carved of cedar, inlaid with gold. Its frame glitters with divine symbols. Inscriptions along its edge speak of cosmic unions, of men and gods, of women who became vessels for eternity. Ancient texts whisper. She lies down. The god comes to her, and Egypt is renewed. The girl is guided to the bed by elder priestesses. She trembles, but she does not resist. Her veil is lifted. For the first time, the crowd within sees her face, not as a virgin, but as a goddess reborn. The high priest raises his staff. His voice thunders. Behold, the god descends into his wife. Through her, he blesses Egypt. Through her, the Nile shall rise, the crops shall flourish, the land shall live. The chanting grows louder. Cymbals clash. The girl lies back upon the golden sheets, her body framed like an offering. What happens next is hidden, always hidden. No commoner is ever allowed to witness. Yet whispers haunt the city, that ritual objects carved in sacred form are brought forth, anointed with oils, believed to channel the very essence of the god. To the faithful, it is not men who touch her, but divinity itself. You hear the priests cry out as the chamber trembles with ecstasy. Amun is here. The god has entered his bride. The people outside erupt in cheers. They believe, without doubt, that the union has been consummated, that the hidden god himself has descended from the heavens to lie with his chosen virgin. To them, this is not scandal. It is salvation. But to you, it feels different. You see a young woman, perhaps unwilling, perhaps chosen, perhaps sacrificed, turned into a vessel for belief. You see a ceremony cloaked in secrecy, where devotion and exploitation blur until they are indistinguishable. And yet, for the Egyptians, the ritual is undeniable power. The wife of the god becomes more than human. She holds prestige beyond queens, wealth beyond nobles, and authority that can sway politics itself. She walks in public, draped in gold, carried in litters, revered as the very consort of divinity. Every glance, every gesture is seen as the will of the god she once lay with. The bed, the chamber, the chants, all of it ensures that the people believe. And belief is stronger than any truth. As dawn breaks, the girl is led back into the light. The crowd roars, calling her blessed. They see not a trembling virgin, but the goddess herself, Amun's eternal wife, Egypt's divine protector. You stand among them, watching, torn between awe and unease. Because you realize now, the gods of Egypt did not only demand temples of stone and rivers of blood. They demanded flesh. They demanded innocence. They demanded that mortals surrender their bodies to the divine. And the people gave it willingly. The torches flicker low inside the temple. The chants have faded. The silence is heavy, almost suffocating. You expect peace, but instead, you are met with a tale that shakes you to the core. One of the elder priests steps forward. His voice is deep, steady, echoing through the chamber. He tells you the story of the beginning of all things, the story of Adam, the first god, the self-created one. According to the scrolls, Adam stood alone in the endless waters of chaos. There was no earth, no sky, no gods, no mortals, nothing but the void. And in his solitude, he brought life into being, not with war, not with sacrifice, but with his own body. The priest leans close, his words heavy with reverence. Adam created the world through the power of his seed. You feel your stomach twist as he describes it. Adam, alone in the cosmos, pleasured himself. His seed spilled into the abyss, and from it came the first gods Shu, the air, and Tefnut, the moisture. From that moment of divine release, the universe began. To the Egyptians, this was not obscene. It was sacred. Creation itself was born from a solitary act of desire. But to you, it feels both intimate and unsettling, like being shown a forbidden secret of the universe. The priest continues, his hands rising theatrically, as though reenacting the moment. From the hand of the god came heaven and earth. From the spilling of his seed came the Nile, flowing eternal. And then you see it. A group of priests approach the altar. They begin their ritual. Their bodies sway, their voices chant in unison. You realize with horror they are imitating Adam's act. The holiest men in Egypt, reenacting creation through the most private gesture. The seed, when released, is not hidden. It is caught in sacred vessels, poured upon the temple floor, or most shockingly offered to the waters of the Nile itself. The river that feeds Egypt is seen as the eternal echo of Adam's release. It floods the orgasm of a god. The crowd outside cheers when the ritual is announced. They do not see blasphemy. They see renewal. To them, this act ensures the crops will grow, the Nile will flood, and the cycle of life will continue. But to outsiders, foreign travelers, Greek chroniclers, Roman soldiers, this was a source of disgust. Some whispered that Egyptian religion was nothing but obscenity wrapped in gold, that their temples were brothels of the divine, where gods and men confused lust for holiness. You stand there, caught between two worlds. To the Egyptians, this is the holiest act in existence. To you, it feels shocking, almost profane, yet the weight of belief presses on you. These people do not laugh. They do not mock. Their faces are solemn, eyes wet with devotion. To them, the act is not flesh, it is creation. Not lust, it is life. And slowly, you realize the terrifying power of ritual. That what one culture calls sin, another calls salvation. That the most private act of the body could become, in another time, the very foundation of the cosmos. As the ceremony ends, the priests lift their arms and cry out, Adam lives, creation continues, Egypt endures. The crowd roars in celebration, praising the act that gave them everything. And you leave the temple shaken, because now you understand the curse of these rituals. Once you have seen them, you can never look at creation the same way again. The air grows heavier as you descend deeper into the temple. The chants you heard above have faded. Down here, beneath the stone foundations, another rhythm takes over low, pounding drums that echo like a heartbeat in the dark. A narrow passage leads you to a wooden door. Faint light spills from its cracks, tinted red, like blood glowing beneath the skin. You push forward, and the hidden chamber reveals itself. The sight stops you cold. Torches flicker against the walls, their flames dyed crimson with colored oils. Incense coils in thick, intoxicating clouds, filling your lungs with sweetness that burns on the way down. The air itself feels alive, thrumming with music, laughter, and something else, something primal. You realize this is no ordinary temple room. This is the chamber of forbidden rites. Priests and priestesses, draped in gold and linen, raise goblets of wine high above their heads. The liquid spills, splashing on stone floors already slick with crimson stains. They drink greedily, their chants dissolving into slurred laughter. The rigid discipline of Egyptian ritual is gone here. Rules collapse. You hear a priest cry out, his voice breaking through the music. For one night, we return to the chaos of creation. The drums grow louder, the wine keeps flowing, and slowly, bodies move closer together. You see hands brushing against skin, lips finding lips, garments sliding from shoulders. What began as ceremony now turns into frenzy. The hidden chamber trembles with the sound of divine unions, priests with priestesses, worshippers with each other bodies, intertwining in ways both intimate and chaotic. To you, it looks like sin. To them, it is holy. Because in Egyptian belief, before the gods brought order, the universe was pure chaos fluid, violent, and unbound. Tonight, that chaos is remembered, reenacted. Orgies become worship. The spilling of wine becomes a mirror of the spilling of seed, and the mingling of flesh becomes the mingling of elements that once formed the world. You feel your chest tighten as you watch. The chamber is hot, suffocating. Sweat glistens on bodies illuminated by red torchlight, movements casting shadows that writhe across the walls like living creatures. An elder priestess raises her voice above the moans and laughter. This is not lust. This is life. This is the flood before the world. Her words hit you like a spell. Suddenly, the scene feels less like madness and more like ritual theater, a dangerous play in which every body is both actor and offering. Foreign travelers who once witnessed such festivals wrote with disgust, describing Egyptian rites as drunken obscenities. Some claimed these hidden chambers were little more than sanctified brothels. But the Egyptians themselves would have dismissed such accusations. To them, these acts were divine, not profane, an echo of the gods, not a mockery. The music quickens. Wine spills across the floor, mixing with sweat, staining feet red. You feel dizzy, your senses overwhelmed by incense, by sound, by heat. It is as if the chamber itself has swallowed you whole. For one night, boundaries do not exist. Hierarchy vanishes. Priest and slave, noble and commoner all, are equal in this chaos, joined together as the gods once were. And then, as suddenly as it began, the rhythm slows. The laughter softens. The torches dim. Bodies, exhausted, collapse against one another in silence. The orgy is over. But its memory lingers, heavy in the air, impossible to shake. You leave the chamber shaken, your mind torn between awe and revulsion. Because you now understand, to the Egyptians, sex was not simply pleasure. It was creation itself. It was power. It was the echo of the first breath of the universe. And in the hidden chambers of their temples, they brought that echo back to life. The papyrus crackles in your hand. Its faded ink tells stories the walls of temples would rather keep hidden. These are not hymns to the gods, nor praises to kings. These are records of shame, of men and women who crossed the line between holiness and corruption. You imagine the scene. The courtyard is filled with whispers. Torches burn not for ritual, but for judgment. A priest is dragged by guards, his white linen torn, his face pale with terror. He had once led sacred rites, blessing couples in the name of the gods. Now he is accused of turning those rites into lust. The crowd murmurs as the sentence is read, exile, after a public whipping. His voice breaks as he protests. I served the goddess. I gave her what she demanded, but no one listens. The lash cracks against his back. Each strike meant not only to wound his flesh, but to remind the watching crowd. Sacred ecstasy could easily become scandal. You feel the weight of humiliation in the air. A man once revered, now writhes in the dust like a criminal. But priests were not the only ones accused. Even pharaohs, the living gods, were not beyond suspicion. Whispers filled Egypt of kings who had desecrated holy chambers with forbidden unions. Ancient gossip spoke of rulers who mistook divine privilege for personal indulgence, taking priestesses not as vessels of the gods, but as personal concubines. To the faithful, this was blasphemy of the highest order. To others, It was merely the truth behind the veil of power. Some dynasties struck back hard. Edicts were issued, banning rites that blurred too closely with indulgence. Certain festivals disappeared overnight, declared unholy. What had once been celebrated as divine union was now condemned as corruption. The tension between devotion and desire tore at the very fabric of Egypt's sacred traditions. And yet scandal has a way of surviving. Centuries later, the same rites resurfaced. New priests, new kings, new excuses. What one era punished, another revived. The people of Egypt seemed unable to decide. Were these acts sacred expressions of lifeless power, or dangerous lapses into depravity? The historian Herodotus, centuries after Egypt's glory, hinted at such contradictions. He described Egyptian festivals where men and women mingled with abandon, acts that shocked his Greek sensibilities. To him, it was proof of Egyptian excess. But to the priests of old, it had been worship. You stand again in that imagined courtyard, hearing the whip crack, smelling the iron tang of blood, seeing the priest dragged into exile. And yet, beyond the punishment, you can feel the hypocrisy. Those who whipped him today might themselves slip into the same chambers tomorrow, because desire is not so easily banished. Egypt wrestled with this truth for millennia. Holiness and scandal were two sides of the same coin. What was divine one year could be heresy the next. And behind every decree, behind every punishment, lay a deeper question: who decides where the line is drawn between worship and sin? As you leave the pages of the papyrus behind, one truth lingers. In Egypt, punishments could erase a man's honor, could destroy a dynasty's name, but they could never kill the desire that fueled the rites in the first place. And so, across centuries, the hidden chambers reopened again and again. You step out of the temple, your footsteps echoing against stone, polished by centuries of worship. The night air clings to your skin, cool and sharp after the suffocating incense within. Above you, the sky is scattered with stars, the same stars that once guided pharaohs, priests, and peasants alike. The Nile glimmers in the distance, flowing silently, as if it has seen everything yet spoken nothing. Egypt's greatness was not only carved into pyramids or sealed in golden tombs. It lived in chambers hidden from the sun, rituals where flesh became prayer, where ecstasy was mistaken for divinity, where desire was draped in linen and called holy. Historians still argue. Some insist these were sacred duties, woven into the very fabric of Egypt's belief that life itself was born from union. Others whisper of exploitation priests, cloaking indulgence in ritual, rulers using the gods as a shield for their own lust. You replay the images in your mind: the priest dragged across the courtyard, the pharaoh accused of desecrating holy ground, the whispered songs of women who offered their bodies to the gods. Were these moments of transcendence, or simply the darkest shadows of human hunger? The temple walls behind you glow faintly in the moonlight, their carvings eternal. Yet you know they do not tell the full story. For every hymn inscribed, there are secrets buried in silence. Scandals erased, names forgotten, desires hidden beneath sand and stone. You take one last look before turning away. The river flows, eternal and indifferent. And you are left with a haunting thought. If these are the rituals that survived in memory, what darker truths still lie buried, waiting for the desert winds to uncover them?